That was brand new gameplay footage from Monster Hunter Wilds, and optimization has arrived. That was footage directly from a PlayStation 5. The Monster Hunter Wilds beta was amazing, but as expected, thousands of longtime fans and even many newcomers found things that they didn't quite like from the game so far. Thankfully, Capcom might just be the best gaming studio to ever exist, and within a matter of weeks, they have told us exactly how they are fixing all of the problems that arose. I have played a lot of video games in my time, and even some more recent ones that I didn't always have the best launch days, but there are still a few studios that I know I can always trust, and Capcom really is one of them. They have addressed key issues such as performance, weapon adjustments, quality of life adjustments, and we got some really key information about support hunters and unseen changes to the entire way skills will work in this game. So you're going to want to make sure to stay tuned till the end of the video because it's pretty amazing and it changes so much of the theory crafting in insane ways, okay? So many of the things players brought up, they didn't actually already plan on fixing. Now, lots of it they didn't intend to change, but this is the beauty of an open beta. It gave them so much information they decided to act on so much of the feedback as well. I'm going to get into all of that. So there were some rendering issues with the graphics on prioritized performance mode on the PlayStation 5 in the open beta test, which has now been fixed. Let's have a look at that gameplay all over again. You can see this thing is running on a buttery smooth 60 frames per second at 1080p. It will also have a day one patch with enhanced graphics support for the PlayStation 5 Pro. As we can see right here on 4K, you're looking at 30 frames per second. It is scaled down a little bit. It's not quite 4K. And on 1080p, you are going to get 60 frames per second when you prioritize frame rate on the PS5, and the graphics are going to be even better on the PS5 Pro. Xbox has the exact same outcome here. You can see that if you prioritize graphics, you're going to get close to 4K with 30 frames and 1080p with 60 frames. Most of the market has one of these two consoles if they don't have a really top-end PC. That's the other part of the market. But for these consoles, it's really good to see that it's going to be very playable for these people. That is on the Series X. On the Series S, you are still going to get 30 frames per second, but it's not going quite as well. And on the Steam, it varies depending on hardware and settings. However, they actually hope to lower the system requirements. Apparently, they made some really great strides in that area, which is one of the big things it needs to top the Steam charts like I hope it will. We don't know what that's going to quite look like, but recommended at 2070 for medium graphics was not particularly great here. That's a pretty expensive graphics card. And the low-end 1660 was not the best graphics card in the world, but it's definitely not going to give you the best graphics here at all. But it looks like this 2070 is going to get lower, even like a 1080 or a 1070. I think would be a really big win for recommended specs here. And then if you have your 2070, you're getting really great FPS, really great graphical fidelity, and I think that would be a huge win for Monster Hunter Wilds. But it sounds like they made some really big progress here, which is very, very exciting. The next things are quality of life updates. A big update is that weapons will now feel more weighty than they ever have before. The hit stop graphics are also much enhanced, where if you're like hitting a monster with like a really big attack, it'll feel like you really hit into it with this huge weight behind you. But the other thing in terms of quality of life is the hammer upswing no longer sends people flying. When I first saw this, I was a bit upset, but when they explained how there's going to be a lot of newcomers and things like that, and frustrating them and getting them to leave isn't necessarily the best thing, it makes sense. Although there are some other adjustments that are the reason for this. But let's have a look at this hammer one first. It used to send people to Valhalla, and now it just kind of knocks them back. It's good to see that it still has impact on other players. That feels nice, but it is very, very funny there. So we love to see that one. The other one is that monsters were moving way too much in Monster Hunter Wilds. It turns out that there was actually a bug that was causing this. You can see from this little note here that the adjustment of frequency of monster area movement so that monsters move between different areas at a similar frequency to Monster Hunter World. Now, it's worth noting here that every monster is different, as they stated. And we already kind of know this from the Monster Hunter franchise, but they really emphasize it here, that some might move really frequently, like we saw in the beta, but others might not move at all. The other thing is some of the apex predators and the larger monsters will actually have nests deep within the zones, and the zones are bigger than we've ever seen in any Monster Hunter game before. And so some monsters will travel really far when they're highly wounded, limping, and all the rest of it. And so they actually recommended using pop-up camps so you can fast travel there later on in the hunt. But you get more experience with the game, I think this will become like second nature. And now we move on to the weapon adjustments. You should just see this one for yourself. Yes, the vaulting dance was removed before, and player feedback came into it, and they were like, you know what? You guys are right. This is a core trait of the Insect Glaive. Have it back, and our vaulting dance is back. It has now returned. But people didn't really like the difficulty of the descending thrust. However, they decided to keep it as it is, since it has rewarding depth to the gameplay. Now, it's still really good to hear that they listened and took note, but they still used their own judgment, which is really important. Some other adjustments that happened is the vaulting dance got added, and an offset effect at the beginning of the descending slash got added as well to help a little bit with that. But also the extracts changed quite a bit. The orange extract now negates knockback. Red, white, and orange extract effect now also mitigate wind pressure, tremor, and roars. So a really big gain for the Insect Glaive players, and players that just want to, like, I know they're probably the most die-hard players outside of maybe Longsword that really love this game. So it's good to see them getting some love in these updates. And the next thing that got some love is the lance. I know people love their lance. Let's have a look. This really new weighty move where you can actually block and then use a counter thrust move. And it also has other expanded gameplay elements, so you aren't just using the same attacks over and over again. They also improved some of the cancellation timings, but let's get on to the switch axe. The big thing with the switch axe is charging the axe and then switching to the sword is the core loop. Now, the sword mode now feels way more powerful, as you can see right there, and it does way more damage. Also that, but the cancellation timings for focus mode had significantly improved, so it's a lot easier to manage the general setup for the switch axe. And honestly, the switch axe and sword and shield were my first mains back in Monster Hunter Tri, and this is making me feel like going back to try it again. Let me know down in the comments which weapon you actually really want to use yourself. Are you going to try a different weapon? Are you going to stick with the tried and true? Also, please like the video. I really appreciate it. It helps me grow and make more content for you guys. So I love to see that stuff. All right. So the next one is the sword and shield. Like I said, switch axe and sword and shield are my first two mains. And this one also makes me feel like playing again. The big feedback was that you can no longer attack while guarding in Wilds, but they fixed that, and now you get the rising slash back all over again. You can see they were blocking and they just attacked. Also, the mobility when you're comboing is actually way more responsive now, so it'll be easier to move around the monster and have a lot more control over how you move using the sword and shield, which is one of my favorite parts about it. Really, its mobility is what makes it stand out, and those attacks are just so much more meaty, and that's one of the big things they've put throughout all of the different weapons in the game. Now, the next thing that got adjusted was the bow, okay? They had to rebalance it a little bit, where the increased attack power and responsiveness for moves such as normal arcs and arc shots, while toning down the power of tracing shots. Okay, I think that's very interesting here, because when targeting, the issue with that is, as Yuya was really liking to say during the community meetup, you can see that he doesn't like to reduce the power of things, okay? And here, he's nerfed it a little bit, but he really doesn't like to do that. But he rather likes to increase the power of other things, so you have elements to use the entire kit. He doesn't want people just using one thing or the other. He wants people using the entire kit in some sort of flow so they can play properly and just like get the most out of the game. Now, the big thing that was adjusted here is that the traces lock on one at a time instead of pretty much all at once. So, and I thought this was going to be faster than it was, but it's actually a little bit slow. Let's have a look. It's so slow. But it's still, I think it's the weapon I'm going to pick up for this next installment of Monster Hunter. I am very excited to try out the bow. The last weapon they got an adjustment was actually the hunting horn, okay? So they found that attack up L, even though you couldn't use it in the beta itself, was way too OP, okay? Let's just put it that way. Now, instead, it gives a really big buff to the player that's using it, the hunting horn user, and less so to the allies. But the big thing is that if you switch weapons, so you have a hunting horn and maybe a hammer, and you switch to the hammer, your buff that you've got on yourself will actually diminish faster. Maybe it's going to last 10 seconds. It might drop to 5 or 4. I don't know what it's going to be, but it will actually drop faster. And so you really have a choice to make. You can use the hunting horn like you did before and buff up allies and keep them all pumped up and going really, really strong. Or you can use it as more of a solo player and use it and switch to your secondary weapon, or use it just as a solo and get all the benefits from it. But really, there's kind of that trade-off now, which I think is a really good balancing act and gives hunting horn players what they already had, while adding new things to the kit that they can use without being too absurdly OP. Because your concern was just every person would just use the hunting horn as their secondary because it was just that good. And so they've had to adjust it a little bit because of that. So one of the last things I want to talk about is that there are huge changes, like I said at the start of the video, to the way skills work in this game. And it is really, really cool. So skills are now tied to the weapon. Things like attack boost and guard are on the weapons now because they directly apply to the way weapons work. And that's because the skills on the weapon change when you swap weapons in and out. And so the problem before was if you had an armor set and it gave you like an attack boost, or sorry, like a guard boost, and you had like a lance, so you had guard, and you had a bow. When you switch to the bow, you basically lose half of your skills just because you switched weapons. And they have changed that now. As you can see right here, it is now on the weapon itself, which is really, really interesting. You can see here that it has speed sharpening, which is perfect for a blade. You don't so much need it for a bow gun, right? So that's really, really cool. So things like speed eating and earplugs are now on armor instead. And with equipment slots on the weapons, you can even customize it further and enhance specific skills, get new skills or whatever. There's so much more theory crafting and so much more strategy that's going to be involved in this now. But here's the best part. As you proceed down the weapon tree, you can see that the weapons change and improve. I thought that was going to be a different thing. Sorry, I don't have the graphic for you. But basically, as you go down, you will keep all of the weapons you had before. So say you have speed sharpening on the level 1 weapon. Then the next one down, you might pick up a new skill. And the next one down, speed sharpening might go to level 2. And then the next one down, the new skill, you might pick up a third skill. I don't know. So it just expands over time. It doesn't really give or take away different things because that would be kind of jarring and annoying from a gameplay perspective. So that's really good. The last few things are for multiplayer. After the feedback, the multiplayer systems were a little bit confusing to some players. Private and squad lobbies will be available on launch, so you can party up with your friends really easy. You can also mute other players and their sticker spamming, which we saw a little bit in the beta. And there will be a new environmental link feature, allowing you to connect to different weather conditions. So for example, if your friend is playing and they're in a sunny time or whatever in the wilds, and you're playing in the lightning, you can do like an environmental link, and I think you will have to join them. But you might actually just like take their state of the game and add it to yours. I can't remember, but it's going to have like, there's going to be some interesting features there. So I think that's going to be really cool. The other thing is they talked about support hunters and went a little bit more in depth on that. Like he said that they wouldn't break wounds for you, but this was actually not true. They will break the wounds for you. However, they do all have really different personalities. Some of the hunters really like breaking wounds, and some of them really like healing or shooting from a distance or running up close. They all have really different playstyles. And he said that in the future, you'll actually be able to select your preferred supports, which will be really cool. You can also use the ping system in the game to ask for healing, instruct them to attack the monster or whatever it might be. So if you don't think that's exciting, hunters and monsters both have so much unique personality in this game that it's like unlike anything else that's ever been built before. And that enhances the gameplay so much and makes it so much easier to play over and over again. It's going to be one of the biggest games of 2025. Now, last but not least, they are considering a second beta test. Now, if this does come out, it will likely be the exact same beta, bugs and all, but it will give players another chance to try the game if they hadn't given it a shot already. Now, I hope you learned something today. Please like and subscribe, and I appreciate all the support.